Hi, my name is Kevin Porman. I'm a developer advocate here at Salesforce, and I have a special guest with me today, Michael Smith. You may know him from such esteemed projects as the Nonprofit Success Pack, which is a mouthful and hard to say, and other things. Michael, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, Kevin. I said, yeah, Michael Smith. I do work on the nonprofit success pack or the nonprofit cloud at Salesforce. I've been at Salesforce for 4 years, but I've been using Salesforce for, wow, nearly 20 years. And I guess the fun fact is that I ride bikes so I can eat cookies.
Wait, is that is that an equation? Like if you ride a bike so far, you get to eat a cookie?
If you count the calories out, absolutely.
Oh, no, that's counting calories. And I count calories all the time, but as I like to say to my boss, my doctor, I am really bad at math, so it doesn't seem to work out for me. All right, Michael, today we're going to talk about caching, what it is, how it works on the platform. There are a couple of different notions of what caching is, and we're going to talk about, at least in part, like how do we go about actually building something out that is cacheable and useful. So what is your experience with caching? Why did this come up in our conversations, caching?
Yeah. Going back a few years, I built out an interface in the Nonprofit Success Pack to cache dated exchange rates for performance reasons, obviously. And then more recently, I've been looking at ways to leverage platform cache in our package. Probably people are aware that managed packages can now include up to 3 meg of free platform cache in the package itself, which opens up a lot of opportunities for us ISVs. And so I've been researching how can I make things a lot faster. I built out a little proof of concept that's out there on GitHub that can time things. And so I basically did A/B timing where I would query some custom metadata without cache. And then I had another, parallel running process that would use the cache to retrieve that same custom metadata. And then I could chart those values over time. And I found that in some places I could make very significant improvements in performance by caching certain things. And there's others where performance is minuscule, but it's always a little bit faster, which is interesting. So that's really what it comes down to. Is I've been really spending a lot of time making recommendations to the teams on how we can use cache for our products.
So when you say that it's always a little, and then you said earlier it was significant, can we put some numbers on
Yeah.
those? So it's like, is it 1% faster, or is it 10% faster when you talk about it being a little bit, or is it
Yep.
100% faster if it's significant?
Um,
What do those ranges look like?
yep. So I think without going and pulling up my charts, if I remember them correctly, we've got some custom metadata that we use for customizable rollups, which is fairly complicated data schema in there, and it's using entity reference fields and the custom metadata types, and so it's pulling in a lot of information. Those queries, which consist of maybe let's say 75 to 100 records with some child records, I was getting about a 28x improvement on
Wow.
my retrieval. Yeah, it's pretty significant.
Wow.
We
Okay.
also turn that into an inner class that we use to group metadata for roll-up purposes, and I was getting an even higher improvement because I could basically cache a serialized version of that inner class rather than construct it even from the retrieved metadata, and that was even faster because I could cache that. And I only need to really construct it one time off the metadata. The metadata this is the key thing. If the metadata hasn't changed, then the structure of my inner class hasn't changed,
Yeah.
and I can cache it. In other places, like we queried some trigger handler records. Those are just S objects. And I think for that, I might have gotten like a 10% improvement. I think it was 5 milliseconds, if that. It was very, very fractional, but it's very small. It's like, I think 30 records, 40
Yeah.
records,
Okay.
pretty small records. So that's the kind of range we're talking about.
Okay, that makes sense. So when we talk about caching on the Salesforce platform, I think everyone's minds like automatically goes to platform cache. Now, platform cache is a thing that I forget. Do orgs come with platform cache?
Um, and if I remember correctly, Enterprise Edition orgs come with.
Yeah,
10 meg.
I think 5 or 10 meg.
Platform
Yeah.
cache. Yeah.
So
Customers can use it as they wish.
So it's one of those things that I feel like is a hidden gem in the Salesforce ecosystem where it exists and it's there for you and not a lot of people are using it. But oftentimes it's because people think, well, caching, one of the classic problems of computer science. But if we think about it, we want to cache things that take a long time to figure out, to calculate. Now, you just mentioned some S-object queries. Those are, that's a thing you can cache. But the metadata one you were talking about, where it's compiled, it's a bunch of queries all put together, distilled down, that sort of expensive calculation, if you'll allow me to cache a phrase here, is what we want to cache, because these are things that we might have to often reference, but are not likely to often change. So the sweet spot for caching is data that is hard to get or hard to calculate that does not often change. Right? Yeah. Now, there is another form of caching that you may have seen me use here in codeLive here before, and I like to call this one memoization. And this is a tactic I learned back in the Ruby days, because Ruby has this language operator, pipe equals. And when you use the pipe equals, your syntax in Ruby looks like this. And what that means is I either want to use this value. I shouldn't give it I shouldn't call it var. We'll call this foo. And when you get to this, when this happens, this means if foo is not null and foo is not empty, return foo, or use foo as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, calculate it. Does that make sense? So what we're doing here is we're saying, if I've already got this value, I'm going to use it. Otherwise, I'm going to go calculate it. And so what this looks like in Apex, and here I'll leave this here for a little bit, is you can have a bit of code that says, let's do string. So string foo, like that. And then in a method, we can say if foo is not nil, return foo. Else foo equals expensive calculation. I can type. Sometimes I feel like autocomplete gets in my way more than it helps me. So ignoring this because we're not syntactically in a method at the moment, what we've got here is if the value is not null, return the value. Otherwise, return this expensive calculation. And this is what I refer to when we say memoization. So we've got this memoization pattern, and one of the things that we can do with platform cache is we can use this memoization pattern in platform cache with a thing called platform cache builder. So let me get rid of this here, just so we can not have syntax errors everywhere. And if we wanted to do, you talked about doing the platform cache builder as an inner class. How would that work? How does it work to do platform cache builder classes?
You basically define, I can type here.
Yeah, go ahead, you take over.
So I think you're basically defining I remember the structure here. So I'll call this expensive cache. Cache builder. Is that what you implement? Something like that.
Okay.
And so now I'm doing that, and then I expose the do load, I believe it is. So I'll say list. It's object. That's what I'll return here.
Now, for those of you who are relatively early on the learning curve for Apex, this implements cache builder. That implements means we're going to implement an interface, and that interface is provided for us. It's actually cache.cache builder.
Yep, I
There we
was just
go.
looking that up.
And then it has, whenever you implement an interface inside Salesforce, inside Apex, you have to implement specific methods. So the interface says there has to be a method called doLoad that accepts a string that is named key. And so we have to implement this method. And once we've done that, then we can say our class implements the cache builder interface. Now what this allows us to do is when we go to use the cache builder, we can pass it this class, and Apex knows to call doLoad when appropriate. And that's the reason we have that sort of contract with the interface. We have to have doLoad and have to take a string called key, etc. So, okay, we've got this doLoad. We're going to do some complex query with the key. Now, what are we passing in the key here for?
You can either use it as an index into a map, let's say, right? Or like if you were dealing with custom metadata or custom settings, right? It could be the name that you're retrieving. It could be, in the case of data exchange rates, right? I might use a key as a country code or currency code. Theoretically speaking, it could be a dummy value too, right? If I just want to cache an entire query and I want to always return the entire query, I could just have string key there and not pass anything in, right? And say, only, right?
Okay.
And then I still, the requirement is that I pass something into doLoad.
Yeah.
But there is not a requirement that I actually use that something.
Okay. But if you do pass it in, that is your key.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Yeah, sorry.
So the key here refers to key equals the keyword for retrieving this cached value, right?
Yep.
Okay. So in caching, we often talk about the cache key. That key is how we're going to reference the cached value. So if you think about a cache, just let's take a step back and think about caching in general. When you throw something into the cache, you attach it to a key, and a cache generally functions, not always, but generally functions as something along the lines of a giant map. Right? So you've got a key and a value, and that value is, whatever object or serialized object you're storing in the cache, but that key is a string that is going to be how you access that cached value. So think about caching as being a global available map in terms of data structure. So here we're going to be able to doLoad. We're going to pass the key. We can, if we don't pass a key here, then it's tied to this expensive cache class, right?
Yeah, you have to pass a key into the cache builder interface, but like I said, you don't have to use it. So, here, the example in the docs is user, right? So here, this might be user ID, and then here I'm basically select the name on user. Where ID equals user ID, right? And so in that instance, I am getting for that one specific user. But let's say I always wanted this to return, all records in an object, or an object that I know has got, a limited balance to it, right? So here I could say ignore me, and then I am just getting all users, and I could even maybe I want to do.
I was wondering if you could do that.
Yeah. Okay. And then just convert that to a map, right? And then that's something more generic. Like in the case of some of the work that I did with custom metadata types, I was just, I knew the bounds of my object. Custom metadata type records, I don't have a limited number of them at all times, and so I just cached the whole thing in that, my proof of concepts. I didn't need to worry about the key because it didn't matter. Same thing with like trigger handlers. I don't need to get just one trigger handler. I just check, there's only 80 of them. I cache the whole thing.
Right. Okay. So this has all been very theoretical so far in terms of, let's actually put a use case together for this.
Yeah.
What is a good example of something that you find that you often feel like you could cache in an org?
I like caching custom metadata types because they can be expensive to retrieve, but I don't know what we have in this org. Something else that you could consider caching is configuration. I mean, obviously, there are some things that you can just use the user object to get, like, is multi-currency enabled. But let's say there was things that were more complicated. Like, I think to determine whether an org is a sandbox or not, you actually have to query the organization object to get is sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, you could cache the contents of that, right? It doesn't really change per se. So not going to change to a sandbox one day. And so you
I hadn't thought about that. All right, let's build an org. Let's build a cache around the organization object. So we've got platform cache builder recipes as our outer class. A public class organization. What would we call this?
You could call it organization. You can't cache. I mean, you could call it organization cache. You can't.
See, this is the other problem in computer science's classic, naming things. So we've hit caching and naming things, and all we have to do the rest of the day is hit off by one errors, and we'll have covered the two classic problems in computer science. Okay, so public class, and then let's call this one cached organization results. It's not perfect. All right, and then we need public. This is going to return an organization object, right?
Well, what do you want it to return? It could return an inner class that defines structure. It could return a value, like maybe the key we pass in might be things like the fields. So is sandbox.
You know what? We're gonna. This is silly. I'm gonna show off a little bit here. So I just created and put out on GitHub the orgshape class. Orgshape. And we're just going to copy this into this one and build it and cache, refactor this to cache what we're doing. All right, so we've got do raw, and we'll open up. There's a older version of it here. And I will save this. All right, so we've got this orgshape class. Let's make sure that it saves here. There we go. All right, so we got an orgshape class, and I've got tests for it, but I'll pull those in later. And what we've got here is a couple of things. One, there are a few methods in here that will tell us a little bit about the org, and they work off this get orgshape method. And this get orgshape method, if I scroll through here, all these get orgshapes expose a property off of something that the organization table or object has. Micah, would you mind not highlighting everything here for a second?
I'm not, actually.
Really? Okay.
I'll click up somewhere else, but I wasn't.
Hey, there we go. Now it's not orange. That was odd.
Yeah, weird.
Now, down here, I've got... if I scroll down all the way, get org shape.
There she is.
Here's our method. Now we could turn around and provide and wrap this in the cache builder interface so that we've got a cached version of org shape, so that calling multiple properties on this will not result in it being called multiple times. However, the way this is done, it's already memoizing the actual org shape object within this transaction, within this instance. So right now we have memoization within this instance. So if you call multiple property questions on multiple properties on an instance of org shape, it will only run this query once. But let's improve that so that it's only going to run the query once every 24 hours. Does that make sense? All right, so How would we go? Let's see. We'll start off with an inner class. So does it have to be public or can it be private?
I think you can actually make it a private because you're not going to expose it outside of this class. I think is what you're doing.
Yeah. So we'll do private class. We'll do orgshape.
Do you follow the capital
Cache orgshape? Yeah, I do it. I just sometimes. So I have this thing where talking and typing it are at the same time are hard. I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so we've got that, and then we can do. We're going to return an organization. So public organization. Do load. And then we have to do a string.
In this case, it's a dummy, so
Required but not used.
oh, I like that for specificity.
I try to be as specific as possible with my variables. My mantra is that always write code or refactor code as if the person who has to maintain it 10 years from now is a homicidal maniac who has your address. So, we'll just keep that there. And then what I can do is I'm just going to take this there, and I'm going to a couple of notes here. One thing I found out the other day is note you should normally limit all your queries with security enforced, but
Unless
you cannot do that for organization.
right.
You
You shouldn't do it in there's definitely objects like async apex query, right? There's a few system objects like that where you want to be able to get data, but you're not interested in whether the person actually has rights to it because you can't give them rights to it.
Now, yeah, exactly. Or my favorite one is where it doesn't matter who you are, what profile you have, even the read-only, read-nothing profile, you still have access to that object. So there's no point in doing with security enforced. We just want to return this, don't we?
Yes.
That's what I thought. So we're going to return our query there. So now we have the cache builder. Now this is going to handle creating that cached value for us. We've got it. We don't have a key for it because it's always going to return that. How do we use this?
So back in the previous method, get orgshape, you're going to do something like
take it away.
Copy and paste the code. Yeah. So I'm going to put some code in there. I think. I don't know where I am. Hang on a moment. Thought I was where you are. Right there. Okay. Test. Okay. So here we could say return organization, cache org shape. Required but not used. I think that would be all you would need to do is that.
Seriously? We just reduce that to a single line of code?
I believe so. I think the only thing we probably just need to make sure of is that cache is enabled in your org.
Okay,
so that's one. You have a method for that, right?
Yeah. Actually, hold on a second. I'm gonna back up here. I'm gonna back this up so we have that code here. First thing, this is bothering me, so I'm going to make it cached org shape.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
I don't know why I caught that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to stub this out and say if is platform cache enabled, return
Yeah, I think it's just missing the if. Somehow that got lost.
If. Okay, so if platform cache enabled. Now let's look at platform cache enabled because I think.
Yeah, you need to check that.
Is platform cache enabled? Do we have a default cache partition? And so we're just calling get capacity on it. But we are running this query, so let's make sure this query is...
And just so I'm clear here, we are specifically going with an org cache, not a session cache.
In this case, yes. Query for default cache partition.
And which we should do. There's no reason to use a session cache.
Okay, so this method is memoized, so this instance should only report whether or not this is going on once.
Yes.
Okay, so we're not still incurring costs of looking things up here. So if we have platform cache enabled, that's great. Otherwise, let's go ahead and at least memoize it, so that we don't have to.
Yeah. And the thing that I think,
through the magic of prettier, ta-da!
Yep. The thing I would do, we go off somewhere. Not that we need to do here, but I would move the query into its own method, so you don't repeat your query multiple times.
Which query?
No, go back down. This query. So I would do something like this.
Okay. That makes sense. Dry it up a bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. And when I'm gonna
Why are we?
I'm gonna move this up here.
Off.
So, private.
Oh, sharing model. That's why.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know why we need to use it. I think that's a linter error because I mean it's an inner, but you could make it without sharing or with sharing. I'm not sure it matters in this instance. Or inherited sharing. What's your class defined as?
It's defined as with sharing.
Does that affect the organization object?
Shouldn't.
Yeah, it shouldn't.
I mean, the organization object's read only.
Yeah.
So we're going to ignore the validate permission. This one says, though, this doesn't exist, and it's right because this doesn't exist inside the class.
Oh, yes, right, it doesn't.
But what we
You have to make it static or do something else with it.
If we make it static, it can't be private.
Nope. Yeah, so maybe, I mean, I've used a singleton for that. But yeah, you could also just not do it that way for simplicity here.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put this in, I'm gonna make it less dry down here. Okay. Is platform cache enabled to the cache builder in the do load method for dependency injection? Yeah, we could do that.
What was the question?
So somebody was suggesting, Suraj was suggesting that moving is platform cache enabled check to the cache builder to this class. And the problem with that is we don't interact with this class in a way that would allow us to use it. It makes sense from a dependency injection manner, but if we look at how we're using this with this is the way the cache builder is used, and so that's not a thing that we have a way of injecting anything into that. We can't say cache.org create an instance get. This is a functionally a static method, so there's no way to dependency inject that. Now, why are we still got some push errors here? Let's see what this says.
Oh, you do?
Maybe I don't. Maybe it was just an old one, but
I gotta find it.
okay.
Yep.
I'm going to do private with sharing class. That's fine. So that'll get rid of that one. And these are our warnings. They're orange. I don't know what the color fidelity is true over the stream, but orange is a warning, not an error. And we were getting this validate CRUD permissions before SOCL DML operations, which is true, except that unless you say with security enforced, everyone's going to be able to make this query. And if you say with security enforced, then the only people who can make the query are those that have, what is it? It's the permission for view config, I think.
Which we don't want to do.
We don't want to do. So I'm going to leave a note here saying, let's do it this way. PMD, and this is going to be Apex CRUD violation.
Oh, I have not used this annotation before.
Oh yeah, watch this. We're going to turn on the suppress warnings for Apex CRUD violation, and boom, Bob's your uncle. We're not going to get that CRUD violation here. Now my rule is if I use that, I have to put in a note here as to why.
Yeah,
definitely. Description
I'm
private
seeing other syntax errors here too.
I'm just seeing the validate CRUD permissions one.
Oh, you know, I'm a different class. Never mind.
Are you getting ahead of us?
Well, the problems output is showing me all the classes, and so it's showing the platform cache builder recipes class, which I need to ignore and just look at orgshape.
Note pressing
Interesting.
PMD warning on CRUD checking because we want everyone to be able to pull this read only record. And I'm going to copy pasta down to our cache builder class.
Yeah.
And get rid of this line. So now we should be free of our CRUD permissions for both.
Yep.
That's good. We might have some other issues at the top. Let's go take a look. Here comes the scrolling.
I can see you scrolling, which is good.
Yeah, so, okay. We don't actually have any more. They're just a couple of lines that we don't have test coverage. So we've changed this to use this cache builder. And the way we're using it, it actually acts very similar to memoization. We're just going to go grab this object, knowing that if it doesn't exist, the doLoad method will be called, and again, Bob's your uncle. Right?
Right.
Okay. So with that said, if we go back to our, let me just copy pasta a little bit more here, and I'm going to go into my tests of orgshape and pull those up. And I'll create a new class. Actually, it may already be here. Orgshape tests. Okay, look at that. There we go. Save that. Now, orgshape does a whole bunch of other things that we're not going into today, but what we're doing here is we're caching that organization object so that we can not have to make that expensive query multiple times. The question is, how do we go about determining whether or not we got a cache hit or a cache miss in our unit test?
That's a good question.
Let's look at the docs for platform cache.
Well, I kind of assumed, without a lot of evidence to support it, that the platform cache is not available in a unit test context.
It is, unless you're using CL data equals true. Which is why if we look at our code for orgshape here, one of the things that it does when trying to determine is platform cache enabled it's a twofold step. First thing it has to do is check to make sure that we have a default cache partition.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is it's going to check to see if CL data is equal to true.
I saw that.
Now,
Where does that CL data method?
it's the one right down here.
Right here. Oh, I see. So you're just using like the connect API to see whether you're getting anything.
Yeah. Part of what
So
having part of what the whole point of orgshape is to find ways to identify which features and functionality is enabled in your org, even though there's not really a simple check for it. So this is a way of doing is CL data equals true. So what we've got here is got this set up so that we can use a platform cache in a unit test. And if we look at the platform cache features, I'm looking for the methods. And let's see, do we have platform cache features, considerations, limits, partitions, internals? Store and retrieve values from the session cache. Only we're doing org cache, so let's go back to that just a second. Come on. My computer is really struggling right now. Try that again.
Org cache.
We'll look at the platform org cache methods.
Which one are you looking for?
I'm looking to see if we've got store and retrieve values from the org cache. Do we have, here we go, we have org cache methods. Org partition. If you're managing cache values in one partition, use the org partition methods instead. After the partition object is checked, let's see here. Somebody's weighing in on chat here. Okay. So it looks like we might be able to grab this from the org partition, because we're putting it in the org partition, right? With our builder.
We can have multiple partitions too. So we need to be specifying what our partition is. And I think here, this is only getting the default partition, if I remember correctly.
Well, it's
that you have.
Okay. So
but, is platform can look up my.
Actually, I'm gonna, before we get too deep in the woods, I'm just gonna make sure these tests pass as they are with our refactor. And
that's a good idea.
Look at that, they all pass. What we don't know, and what I want to see if we can't find out, is whether or not we can make these tests pass knowing, I'm gonna start writing another unit test here. So we'll come down to the bottom, is test. And we'll do static void test cache hit positive. And so if we do orgshape is equal to new orgshape, like that, and then I do Boolean discard is equal to orgshape dot is platform cache enabled. Actually, is platform cache enabled is not going to tell us that. What we want to do is we want to grab any property. So we'll do is read only, and this should populate the cache, and then I'm thinking of ways we can test this. So if we did test.start test, that's not a block. What am I doing, Kevin? test.stop test, then if we were to also say boolean check is equal to orgshape dot, what else is we'll just do is sandbox. So this should use the cache. And one way we could do that is to check the number of queries that have happened. So we could say system cert equals, and we'll do limits.get query, get queries, and that's actually the, so we want 0, comma. Actually, this is going to be for the life of the transaction. So query rows. No.
What else is it going to query?
Well, that's a good point. So let's look at this. Here's orgshape. Here is on the left is orgshape. On the right is on the let me get rid of the file folders here. A little bit more room. So get orgshape is going to run this, but it's going to check as platform cache enabled, and so platform cache enabled is going to run query for default cache partition, and query for default cache partition is going to run one query. And the first time this is populated, the orgshape, so it's going to be, there should be 2 queries. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, well, if the cache is not warm, then yes, there would be 2 queries.
And isn't the cache reset in a test context?
That is where I'm unsure.
All right, we'll try this out.
It feels like it should be called in a test context. Because then, particularly if CL data is false, because then you're getting data. And the whole point of CL data is false is that you're not getting data. But I just don't know the answer. And I think this is what we're going to find out.
Yep. So we're going to make the orgshape, and we're going to call this property, which is going to cascade down to warming the cache on the internal orgshape object. This one should use the cache, but this one will have run not only the query for the orgshape, but also the query for the default cache partition. So those 2, we should have those 2 there. This should not equal a third cache. So I'm going to clear this, and now that we've saved that, I'm going to run that. Let's see this. Failed to run. Test cache hit positive. Does not exist in the class with.
Did you deploy it to the org?
I saved it.
I don't know if you've got it. I can't see the SFDX methods running to push, so I can't tell whether it went
yeah, no, it totally pushed. Let's try that again. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know that I've gotten that one before. So
can we open the org and just look in there just to see? You probably can't. That doesn't share anyway, so we can do that.
Let's try that. Is it?
While you were doing that, I was looking at the partitions.
I wonder if it's because we don't have. This is not syntactically correct. We can't push.
Oh yeah, maybe it failed. You can comment that out.
Yep. Let's do this. Just get rid of this. Okay. Now we'll push. Let's see. That let's X. It says Salesforce CLI, no results found. Okay. So now if we go to our org results shape tests. Okay. Now we're going to get medieval on it. We're going to go into the org. We're going to use.
There's two errors in org shape. Line 84 and 127. It looks like it's pulling in the org shape, which I think we got rid of. Let's see, orgshape.orgshape.id. And I think we got rid of orgshape.orgshape.
Oh, there's
that was
in this one. Okay. We did, and so that one's going to be, that's an interesting test.
What did we do for that?
Org check. Just do it that way. Are there any other errors in this one?
Yeah, so we have a get org shape
test.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any other issues with this.
Let me see. I have line 127.
127.
Variable not visible. Org shape.save default cache partition.
Yeah, but that's not true.
Okay.
That's a tooling error because safe default cache is test visible. It's just private by default.
Okay.
I'll try saving this. We got any problems here? Org shape tests. Discard defined but not used. Check is defined but not used. That's fine. Test hit cache positive.
Yeah, 127 is still the only one that I'm seeing. That's actually a warning, not an error, though.
Yeah. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look in the debug console and see what's going on.
No errors left here for me.
Open. Org shape tests. Go down to the bottom. Test cache hit positive. It's right there. Got a failure. Let's see what the failure is. Dependent class is invalid and needs recompilation.
Org shape, probably. Maybe repush org shape.
No, it's can the user. This is my fault. Can the user, and we're gonna have org shape dot. There we go.
Folks, this is how we write live code.
Yeah.
Trial and error. Thank goodness for debug console.
I feel like it's more trial, more error than trial. But, you know. All right, so let's try that again. So let's use, now that we've run test. Still didn't like it. Let's rerun the test over here.
Let me see if I get any other errors. Nope.
Org shape tests. Run. Okay, well, the good news is some of them passed. This one, assertion, I got 2 assertion fails. No expected queries for this property, expected to actual 4.
4?
And it could be that I'm just miscounting.
Well, still, we're 2 over. Let's see here. So instantiation, no. No constructor, right?
There.
ID, get org shape. So everything calls get org shape.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open this up here, and I'm going to go to orgshape.
We can use the debug log
Exactly.
too to find out what the queries are.
LMNOP, test cache hit positive. I'm going to hit, this is something I've not shown on the stream before, so I'm going to be a little explicit as to what's going on here. I'm going to hit the bug icon here in the test browser, and when I do that, it's going to give me, it's going to run my test for me, and then give me my results, but it's not.
Is it going to share it out for us?
Well, it's saying no test results found, so let's try that again. I'm going to put a line break in here, and I'm going to, not a line break, a process break, and grab that, and so I'll rerun this. Nope, still not. Okay, what is going on here? Somebody's, let's see, this one. It's at least running my tests, which I feel like is better, right? That's better, right? It's still saying skipping it. Where's this? Oh, that's completed. Huh.
While you're debugging that, I was going to say before, I was researching just the partitions, or the cache can support multiple partitions.
Mm-hmm.
And so here we're using the default, but you don't have to use the default. You can have different partitions by feature or functionality, or in the case of us, we would have a partition for our managed package. And so you can specify the partition name in your code and then use that partition for all your cache builder and other stuff. Even if you're not using cache builder for session and org cache, you can define that. So it's a nice way to break up how your cache is used. If you want one cache, let's say for this set of functionality, and another cache for that other set of functionality, and never to the two meet. It's a good way to break things up. But here we're just using the default.
I'm trying to get this to
go.
Yeah, this is. I'm going to have to make a white space. Suraj is saying if we implemented a static counter in the doLoad method of the cache builder, you could check to see if the doLoad was called. That's true. That's true. I would rather not introduce that solely.
I don't know if we'd be able to get it out in that interface. Maybe. So cached org shape dot public static var. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, we still should be able to.
You can't even get this to show up in debug log?
Exactly.
Wow.
Okay, here we go. Maybe this is. Nope, skip. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this entire test out. How do you like them apples?
Yeah. And then try the whole thing again, see what you get.
Okay, did that push? I hate that I have to keep going back and forth between these two things. All right, change that. Great. Okay, good deal. Here we go. Static void test cache hit positive. It's an @is test. That's right. Static void. Okay, everything is correct there. We get rid of this little tailing comment. Save it. I'm going to come over here and close this. Okay. Run test. test cache hit positive does not exist in the Apex class with ID. You're wrong.
Man, that is annoying.
You're wrong. You're just wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's think about this. If we were going to do this, and we're going to hit this do load method, we're gonna have to break this up a little. Go ahead.
Are you so? You're getting an error that the test doesn't exist, but yet you're seeing assert failures in the debug log.
I'm not seeing in the debug log now. It says,
oh, okay.
It's just saying runtime. It says this. So that's fun. Now, in our last 5 minutes here, we're gonna try what Suraj suggested, and what I'm gonna do here is we're gonna break up this method just a little bit. So we can say organization org equals, there's our query. We're going to say at test visible testable visible. We'll do static. We'll do private static.
So you have to define that at the class level, not in the method?
Yes. Good catch. Private static Boolean cache warm is equal to false. Right now here we're going to say oh, you know what, we're going to have an issue because I don't think we can have it's a static methods. We can't have static methods in an inner class, but we can have static properties, right? So we'll do orgshape dot cache orgshape dot cache warm is equal to true, and now we can come down here and return org.
But you need to then make that public.
It's test
to
visible.
get rid of the test visible because it's not being called from a test context. It's being called from within itself.
Really?
Well, yeah, because this code on line 323 is going to run all the time, not just in a text, not just in a visible context. And so if it's private, then that is not visible
to itself.
So, yeah.
I mean,
so I would expect it to not work. I think the test visible only works.
I should be able to do that. That should resolve it.
That might work. Yes.
Let's find out. Let's save it.
Static can only be used on fields of a top level type.
Well, that's frustrating.
What line? 312. That's the top.
We can't have a static property.
And the center class.
And since we're not instantiating this, we don't have a way to access it.
I mean, you could define it at the outer class level, the orgshape class level.
Or we could just make cached orgshape its own top level class.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. At this point, we're just trying to figure out whether this is even being called or not. So I'm not sure I'd move it out yet.
Yeah. I'm gonna just comment this right now.
We're just trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
What happened up there? Oh, because there's a test visible.
Oh.
It's not. Yeah.
Just get rid of it. I'm gonna make it more complicated than it is. Okay. So, suppress warnings. For the crud. Okay, that worked. I'm gonna run this again. You know what, now I'm gonna push and override conflicts.
Yeah. I wish I could see your output, but I can't.
Is it not showing the output?
Nope. Nope. My output tab is empty.
Oh.
The only tab I actually can see anything on is problems.
That's because it's running locally. Okay, so let's try running our test again. Failed to run. Why did it fail to run? It does not exist. And if I go over here and I do a test run, new run, and I do a orgshape tests, and I do test cache hit positive. I'm just going to run that one. Run it.
You're doing this from the org itself?
Yeah, from the...
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to minimize that. Minimize that. Okay, so here's our last one. And it's saying we're out of time. We are out of time.
We are out of time. Yeah.
And this is saying we have an assertion failure. Expected no new, but I took out the assertion. All right, guys, everyone, guys and gals, thanks for tuning in. Unfortunately, we were not able to get this fully tested to the way I wanted, but I'm going to keep working on this, and we'll get it into the repository sometime soon here. It usually takes a couple of weeks. I want to thank you, Michael, for joining us today, and I hope you all learned a lot on caching. If you did, feel free to hit the subscribe button so you can see when we push new videos out, and feel free to like it so I know that you liked this content. Thank you for tuning in, Suraj. Thank you for being on chat, and we will see you all next Thursday.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Kevin. Appreciate it.